Did one massive piece of U.S. legislation just force a multi-billion-dollar auto giant to split its entire global future in two? Welcome to this deep dive. You brought us a stack of notes detailing Hyundai Motor Group's incredible global strategy pivot. We're looking at how U.S. trade policies, specifically tariffs and the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, have fundamentally reshaped where and how Hyundai plans to build its next generation of vehicles.
Yeah.
We're talking about a forced and costly adaptation on a scale we really haven't seen in decades.
That's the core tension here. Our mission today is to unpack this dual-track strategy they've adopted. On one hand, you see this rapid, large-scale localization right here in the U.S.
Just to comply with the rules.
Exactly, to comply with mandates and dodge tariffs. But at the same time, they are pouring historic, record-breaking investment back into South Korea.
And that's for the future tech.
That's where they're focused on securing global leadership in things like AI and hydrogen. We're going to crunch the data to see the true cost, the real consequence of this government intervention. Okay, let's hit the 90-second news hook, because the stakes here they're immediate and they're huge. Hyundai is the second largest seller of EVs in the U.S.
Trailing only Tesla.
Trailing only Tesla, which puts them right in the crosshairs. So they're caught between, a hammer and an anvil of government mandates.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, you have this threat of protectionist tariffs. We're talking as high as 25%. That is a massive hit to any company's bottom line.
And the anvil is the subsidy. We're talking about the IRA's promise of up to $7,500 in consumer tax credits.
On the golden ticket.
It is.
Right.
But that credit is only available if the vehicles and their batteries are, substantially made here in North America. When you pit a 25% penalty against a $7,500 incentive, well, it stops being a business decision.
It becomes mandatory compliance.
Exactly.
And compliance means speed. This policy squeeze has forced Hyundai to, double down on America, committing to an unprecedented $26 billion in U.S. investment.
And you can see the rush.
Oh, yeah. In Georgia, they're accelerating construction on their $7.6 billion EV and battery plant. They're trying to pull the original January 2025 deadline ahead by, 3 months or more?
They're literally paying massive overtime just to hit a political deadline. But what's fascinating to me is the defensive counterweight while they're rushing factories in Georgia.
They were building the future back home.
At the same time, they announced a staggering 125.2 trillion won. That's roughly 86 billion US dollars in investment back in Korea. It's almost all for high-tech, R&D, AI, robotics. It shows how trade policy forces a company to juggle compliance here with long-term dominance somewhere else.
Okay, let's unpack that American squeeze in more detail. It's these two forces, tariffs and subsidies, driving everything.
The tariff risk is the defensive part, the fear factor. U.S. trade policies, especially the threat of high import duties, force this shift to domestic production.
It's the uncertainty, right?
It's the uncertainty. As of late 2025, some South Korean auto parts were still getting hit with that 25% duty, even as a deal to lower it was being discussed.
Right.
You can't make a 5-year plan with that kind of risk.
So building plants here is their hedge. If they build it here, the tariff threat it evaporates. And they're going to extremes. Your notes show they're even covering U.S. tariffs for their own suppliers.
Yes, they're absorbing the financial punishment on behalf of their partners. It just shows how deep the cost of these policies goes.
So that's the stick. What about the carrot?
The carrot is the IRA incentive. That $7,500 tax credit is so huge, it basically acts as the price of admission to the U.S. EV market.
Right.
Because Hyundai's imported EVs were initially excluded from the full credits, the IRA became this critical catalyst for localizing everything, and fast. They simply have to build here to be competitive.
Okay, so this rush to become American-made, it's not just about bolting cars together, it's way more complex. It's about vertical integration to satisfy all these sourcing rules.
The scale is immense. As we said, it's a $26 billion investment plan with a target of manufacturing 80% of the vehicles it sells in the U.S. By 2030.
80%. That's a total rewrite of their whole strategy.
It is. It's driven by regulatory deadlines, not organic market growth.
And beyond just speeding up the Georgia plant, you mentioned this vertical integration. This is where it gets really expensive.
Precisely. To hit the rules on critical minerals and battery components, they're investing all the way down the supply chain. For batteries, they've partnered with LGES for a joint venture in Georgia.
The goal being
100% USA battery sourcing, strict IRA compliance. But here's the part people miss. They are also investing $6 billion in a low-carbon steel mill in Louisiana
Wait, hold on. A steel mill? Why does an automaker need to own a steel mill?
because the IRA demands it indirectly. To maximize subsidies, they need domestically sourced materials flowing upstream. That Louisiana mill is designed to produce 2.7 million tons of steel a year, which cuts their reliance on imports and makes their vehicles compliant from the ground up.
Wow. So the regulations reach all the way back to the raw material.
All the way back.
This kind of forced, rapid investment, it has to have a clear financial impact on their, global health.
Oh, it absolutely does. This is the smoking gun. The sheer scale of these U.S. investments, all for tariff mitigation and expansion, forced Hyundai to trim its 2025 operating profit margin target down to 6 to 7%.
So you can draw a direct line.
A direct line. That margin narrowing is the price of compliance. It's like a policy premium Hyundai has to pay just to play in the U.S. market. They're sacrificing profit globally to satisfy U.S. demands.
So compliance here is costing them billions and shrinking their margins. But if that's the defensive cost, where are they placing their real bet for long-term leadership? Your notes suggest it's all happening back in South Korea.
The contrast couldn't be more stark. The $26 billion in the U.S. is for capacity and compliance. But the investment in Korea is, again, almost $87 billion US dollars over 5 years.
That's more than 3 times the U.S. spend.
Way more. It's the clearest signal you could get of where the company sees its future, its high-value IP creation.
And what's that money for? It's not just more car factories, right?
No, not at all. The focus is exclusively on the future. About half of it is dedicated to AI, robotics, hydrogen, and something called software-defined vehicles.
Okay, software-defined vehicles. For you listening, that sounds like jargon. What does that actually mean?
It means the car is becoming a computer on wheels. Instead of being a piece of hardware you buy once, the car's features, its performance, even its range, can be updated and upgraded through software.
So it's a subscription model for your car?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
It's the highest margin part of the future car, and they are keeping that entire IP generation process ring-fenced back in Korea.
And they're also making these huge moves in hydrogen.
That's the other anchor for their Korean hub. They're building a major new hydrogen fuel cell facility in Ulsan. The goal is to mass produce 30,000 fuel cell units and PEM electrolyzers.
And just to clarify, PEM electrolyzers are the tech needed to make green hydrogen efficiently.
Precisely. They're positioning Korea to be a global export hub for these cutting-edge components. The strategy is clear. The U.S. gets the assembly lines for market access. Korea keeps the R&D engine and the global export engine.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this? Hyundai's story is a perfect example of how tariffs and big government subsidies are warping global capitalism. They force companies to build factories where you want them.
They do.
But they don't necessarily capture that fundamental high-tech innovation base.
That's the key takeaway. The U.S. is forcing assembly and supply chain integration, but it's costing Hyundai billions and narrowing their profit outlook. Meanwhile, Korea is nurturing the real technological future AI, SDVs, hydrogen with its own historic investment. We got the factories, but Korea arguably secured the future-proof intellectual property.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to consider. Hyundai and Kia are already trailing Tesla in U.S. EV sales. Globally, they're teaming up with other Korean giants to take on China. Now, if U.S. policies are forcing companies like Hyundai to rush production and trim their margins just to sell cars here, while China is still, quote, leapfrogging the rest of the world, does American policy need to focus less on protectionism and maybe more on pure innovation speed and deregulation to actually win the global mobility race?